Chapter 16 of The Cat of Bubastes, A Tale of Ancient Egypt. This recording is in the public domain. The Cat of Bubastes by G.A. Henty. Chapter 16. Up the Nile. Late at night Jethro again went up to the hiding place on the hill. Chigron had just returned from another visit to the city. He said, "The whole of the town is in an uproar. The news that Ptylus and his son have been found slain has been received, and the excitement is tremendous. The death by violence of two high priests of Osiris within so short a time is regarded as a presage of some terrible national misfortune. That one should have been slain was an almost unprecedented act, an insult of a terrible kind to the gods. But this second act of sacrilege has almost maddened the people. Some regard it as a judgment of Osiris, and deem that it is a proof that, as a few ventured to whisper before, the death of Ameres was brought about by an intrigue among a party of the priests headed by Ptylus. Others see in it a fresh proof of the anger of the god against Egypt. The king himself will, it is said, take part in services of propitiation in the temple of Osiris tomorrow. Sacrifices are to be offered, they say, in all the temples. A solemn fast will be proclaimed tomorrow, and all the people, high and low, are to shave their eyebrows and to display the usual signs of mourning. So far I have heard nothing as to the fact that two girls who were in the house are discovered to be missing, but tomorrow, when those who were in the house are questioned by the magistrates, this fact will doubtless come out, and the men will own that by the orders of Ptylus they carried Mysa away at the time the attack on the house was made. At present, however, there is no question of women in the case, and I can go down to the boat with the girls in company with Chigron without any fear whatever. But it is better that you should not be with us when we embark, for when the matter comes to be talked over, some one who sees us embark might notice that our number tallies with that of the three persons present when Ptylus was killed, and the two missing girls. Therefore Chigron's opinion is that it will be safer for you to start at once and walk to Maita, a village 20 miles up the river. There the boat will lie up tomorrow night, and as soon as it is dark you can come on board. I shall tell the boatmen that I expect you to join us there, as you have gone on ahead to transact some business for me in the neighborhood." "That is certainly the best plan," Amuba agreed. "There are too many who know Chebron by sight for it to be safe for him to go down to the boat here and embark in broad daylight. I will take 2 hours' sleep before I start, for as I did not sleep last night, and have walked 40 miles since I left the chariot, I feel in need of a little repose before I start again. I was foolish not to have slept this afternoon, for I have since midday been hiding near, but there was so much to think about that I had no inclination to do so, especially as I believed that we would have a night's rest here." "I will wake you," Chebron said. "I have been asleep the better part of the day, having had nothing to do since we arrived here yesterday evening." Chebron sat watching the stars until he saw that they had made 2 hours' journey through the sky. Then he roused Amuba. Both now laid aside their garments as peasants and put on the attire prepared for them as the sons of a small trader. Amuba had submitted, although with much disgust, to have his head shaved on the night following the death of Ameres, and it was a satisfaction to him to put on a wig, for, accustomed as he was to see the bare heads of the peasants, it was strange and uncomfortable to him to be going about in the same fashion. As soon as they were dressed they started, made their way down to the bank of the river above the town, and walked along the broad causeway by the stream until within a mile or two of their destination. Then they turned off toward a clump of trees which were visible by the first gleam of dawn a quarter of a mile away. Here they slept for some hours, and late in the afternoon returned to the side of the river and strolled quietly along, watching the boats. Those in the middle of the stream were making their way down with the current lightly and easily, the crews often singing merrily, rejoicing over the approaching meeting with their friends after an absence of many weeks. The boats going up the stream were all close to the bank, the crews walking along the causeway and laboring at the tow ropes, for there was not enough wind to render the sails of any utility in breasting the stream. The craft were of various kinds, some shapeless and rudely fashioned, used in conveying corn from the country higher up down to Thebes, and now returning empty. Others were the fancifully painted boats of the wealthy, with comfortable cabins and sails of many colors richly decorated and embroidered. These were carrying their owners up or down the river, between their country mansions and the city. It was half an hour after sunset when the two friends arrived at Maita. Darkness falls quickly in Egypt after the sun has gone down, and their features could scarcely have been recognized had they been met by any one acquainted with them in the streets. The scene in the streets of the little village was a busy one. Its distance from Thebes rendered it a general halting place for the night of the boats which had left the capital early, and a great number of these were already moored off the bank, while others were arriving in quick succession. The boatmen and passengers were busy making their purchases at the shops. Fishermen, with well-filled baskets, were shouting the praises of their fish. Fowlers, with strings of ducks and geese hanging from poles from their shoulders, were equally clamorous in offering them for sale. The shops of the fruiterers and bakers and those of the vendors of the vegetables that formed so large a portion of the diet of the Egyptians were all crowded, and the wine shops were doing a brisk business. Chebron and Amuba made their way through the busy scene, keeping a sharp lookout for Jethro, for they considered it certain that owing to the early start the boat was to make it would have arrived there some hours before, and that he would be on the lookout for them. In a few minutes they saw him looking into one of the shops. He started as they went up to him and touched him, for he had not perceived them before. "All well?" Amuba asked.
"Everything has gone off admirably. We got off without the slightest trouble. But come on board at once. The girls are anxious about you, although I assured them that there was not the slightest risk of your being discovered on your way here."
So saying, Jethro led the way to the boat, which was moored by the bank 100 yards above the village.
"In order," Jethro said, "that they could make an early start in the morning, and be off before the rest of the boats were under way." "Here are your brothers," Jethro said in a loud voice, as he stepped on board. "I found them dawdling and gossiping in the street, forgetting altogether that you were waiting for your evening meal until they came on board."
Both entered the cabin, which was about 8 feet wide and 12 feet long, but not high enough for them to stand upright. The floor was spread with a thick carpet, cushions and pillows were arranged along each side, and thick matting hung from the top. In the daytime this was rolled up and fastened, so that the air could play through the cabin and those within could look out at the river; but at present it closed the openings and kept out both the night air and the glances of passers-by. At the other end was a door opening into the smaller cabin allotted to the girls. A lamp swung from the beams overhead. Mysa gave a cry of pleasure as they entered and was about to spring to her feet when Jethro exclaimed:
"Mind your head, child. You are not accustomed to these low quarters yet."
"Thank the gods we are together again," Mysa said as Chebron, after embracing her, sat down on the cushion beside her. "I feel almost happy now, in spite of the dreadful times that have passed."
"It does feel homelike here," Chebron said, looking round, "especially after sleeping in the open air on the hard ground, as we have been doing for the last month."
"I should hardly have known you, Amuba," Mysa said. "You do look so different in your wig, and with your skin darkened."
"I must look horrible," Amuba replied rather ruefully.
"You don't look so nice," Mysa replied frankly. "I used at first to think that short, wavy golden hair of yours was strange, and that you would look better in a wig like other people; but now I am sorry it is gone."
"Here is our meal,"
Jethro said as the hangings that served as a door were drawn aside, and one of the men entered bearing a dish of fried fish and another of stewed ducks, which he placed on the floor. Jethro produced some cups and a jar of wine from a locker in the cabin, and then the men, by his orders, brought in a jar of water for the use of the girls. Then sitting round the dishes they began their meal, Jethro cutting up the food with his dagger, and all helping themselves with the aid of their fingers and pieces of bread that served them for the purpose of forks. Mysa had been accustomed always to the use of a table, but these were only used in the abodes of the rich, and the people in general sat on the ground to their meals.
"We have not begun our hardships yet," Mysa said, smiling. "I should not mind how long this went on. I call this much better than living in a house, don't you, Ruth?" "It is more natural to me than that great house of yours," Ruth replied; "and of course to me it is far more homelike and comfortable, for I do not think I was a favorite among the other servants. They were jealous of the kindness you showed me."
"There is one thing I wanted to say," Jethro said. "It is better that we should not call each other by our names. I am sure that the boatmen have no suspicion here that we are other than what we seem to be, but they can hardly help hearing our names, for all Egypt has rung with them for the last month, and it would be well if we changed them for the present. You must